Hello and welcome back to this special edition of the Story X Story podcast that we are doing in collaboration with Comic Conline. My name is Nigel. I am the co-founder of the manga brand mayamada, and right now I am joined by comic writer, artist and editor Fabrice Sapolsky. Fabrice, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
That's good to hear. Good to hear. So for anyone that's new to our podcast, you can listen to Story X Story on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also reach out to us. Our email address is feedback@mayamada.com or just contact us on social media @mayamada on Twitter, @mayamadatees on Instagram. And you can also give a shout out to Comic Conline, who are at Comic Conline on Twitter. We're going to go straight into our interview. So Fabrice, you are the creator of Spider-Man Noir, as well as a bunch of other projects, including your own creator-owned comic, Intertwined. You're also the founder of Fair Square Comics, which was created in 2019. Let me get my dates right, 2019. With the ambition to be the first comic book think tank, which I thought was an interesting expression. So I'm going to dig into that a bit more. But as I was looking at your website, and I was quite intrigued by your journey. So I'm always interested to know, how people got to where they are. But I think for you in particular, like your literal journey, because you came from France, where you started your career, and you now live in LA. And you ended up pitching a new Spider-Man comic for Marvel. So my first question is, how did that happen? Tell us everything.
Okay, so first let me correct one thing from your nice presentation. Is yes, I'm the originator of the Spider-Man Noir concept, but it's co-created with David Hine.
Cool.
The British writer David Hine.
Okay.
Who has been my partner on this and my mentor and overall extremely talented and nice guy. And I couldn't have done this without him because you have to keep in mind that, Spider-Man Noir was created 13 years ago. That's a long time. But at the time, I was nobody. I was a journalist and I was working, I had a magazine back in France called Comic Box, and I was the editor-in-chief of that magazine. So nothing was preparing me for becoming the next comic book writer or creator. Yeah. And it kind of triggered my journey because when I started talking to Dave and we realized that we had something really solid that we needed to talk to Marvel about, it became clear that there wouldn't be any. I couldn't go back. So it was really like a life-changing decision to jump and decide to co-write and co-create Spider-Man Noir with Dave. And this is what happens. And now, flash forward 13 years later, you're right, I'm in Los Angeles. I work in comics. I created my own company last year. I was an editor. I probably did almost everything you can do in the comic book business. Writer, artist, journalist, inker, editor, letterer, designer. I did all that. But the only thing that I can't really do is colors because I'm really not good enough, but I'm working on it. So maybe one day I'll master colors really well.
Yeah, take that off as well.
Exactly. But it's also not just because I like to learn as much as I can about our industry, but I also think that you're a better band leader, you're a better innovator, you're a better trendsetter, you're a better overall you're better at what you do if you know how to do everything. That doesn't mean that you will do everything the best way or the perfect way, but at least nobody can tell you how it's done. Nobody can you don't take anything for granted. You just learn and you experience and you understand. And I certainly know that being a writer, and especially all my time as an editor, I was a better editor because when a writer would come up with something, I would find the right words to tell them why it was not the right thing or why it was the right thing. Same for an artist, because I know the challenges, and sometimes I would like look at a panel and I was like, I understand that you struggled with that panel, and the artist would say like, how do you know? I know because I would struggle too, the way it was written in the script. So this is like, I love comic books. This is like, comic books are the love of my life. And I want to keep being in that business, but also being in that business in a different way. And I was kind of at the crossroads back in February. Up to that point, I was of this year, yes. Yeah. And COVID kind of changed everything. I was senior editor at a company called Humanoids, which originally was a French publisher, but set in LA for the past 20 years. And I joined them in 2017. And then I was laid off in 2020. And I was like, okay, what's my next move? And I mean, I started looking at the jobs, and there was no jobs. There was no jobs at other companies. There was no opportunities. And I'm like, okay, maybe the next opportunity is yourself, because that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of like went pedal to the metal on Fair Square Comics and started developing like dozens of projects. Not all of them will go on the same pace. Not all of them will be like equal, and some will be published this year, next year, in 2 years. I have a graphic novel coming up next month, but it's important that at one point you are in control of your own narrative, of your own destiny, and that's why a comic book think tank, because I have like 27 years of experience in that business, on both sides of the Atlantic. And I know many markets. I know the French market. I know the American market. I know the UK market. I know the Italian market. I know a lot of markets. And I also know that comic books are global. It's not just a local thing.
Yeah.
And there are patterns. There are things that make this business relevant and interesting everywhere. But as I always say, as long as you read a page and it's sequential reading with panels and balloons, it's comics to me. Whatever the style, whatever it's, a lot of people, and especially in Europe, have a tendency to put back to back American comics, European comics, Japanese comics, Korean comics. To me, it's just comics. I don't see color. I don't see nationality. I see comics.
Yeah.
And comics are this universal language that we should all speak, because it makes us more open-minded and better.
Yeah, I think that really is like the power of comics and stories, being able to empathize with characters and people that aren't you and see from another's perspective. And I think that is kind of like a universal thing, like you say, no matter where the comics are coming from, that's a universal power that comics do have. So I totally get that. And I think like you working in almost all areas of comics, I guess from like a teamwork thing, it gives you an appreciation of other people's job, other people's roles that I think helps, because I can't draw, so I can't fulfill that aspect. But in other areas of like my career, like I used to be a software engineer before I was making comics, and for example, like when it came time to making our website, and I'd have someone else do it, I know that the things I'm asking for, I know what I'm asking for, basically. So I'm not asking necessarily too much. And if you tell me a certain thing, I understand what you're saying, so we can have that conversation. I think that's the same thing that you've got the ability to do.
And the other thing that I want to say is that I am, to me, different kinds of comics and different. It's like different cultures. It's our differences are fantastic.
Yeah.
Our differences are amazing because they allow us to see how broad the human mind is, how incredible the creativity from every part of the world is, and also looking at different genres and sometimes same genres from different parts of the world. I have now a lot of creators from Africa contacting me and say, "Hey, I see that you're recruiting creators. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, some are not ready, some are very ready." And the thing is like, okay, and since it's my own company, how can I open the doors differently? How can I make it? And I saw like, again, over the course of my career, I saw incredible creators. Sometimes they were not at the right place at the right time. And I enjoy as much being front and center as an artist and writer and creator as I like to be the man behind the man. And I think that both are extremely rewarding. I often use music comparison, and like I like funk and R&B music. So if you have a huge art act like Prince or like Rick James or like all these big producers and artists, they can be the artist, but at the same time they can be the producer and have other people front and center.
Yes.
And I mean, again, with a lot of humility, I like to play in that ballpark. I like to play in that sandbox and say, hey, I can be front and center. And I created Fair Square Comics initially first to publish my own comics because I realized that no one is going to sell them as good as I will. And comics are such an incredible science. And making money from it is extremely hard. You probably will agree.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work and not a lot of reward. But at the same time, we have the bug. We were bitten by a radioactive comic when we were kids, and now we have the curse.
Yeah.
So it's very important to not just do it for ourselves, but do it for others. And Fair Square Comics is for that. I might end with just one thing. I started promoting 2 hashtags through my website and my social media presence. The first one is Comics Are Life. And I even launched a YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago called Comics Are Life.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because I think that when you have information, it's time for the truth to be heard. There are a lot of fantasies about comic. There are a lot of fantasies about what creators do, creators make. There are like a lot of fantasies that creators have themselves. And I think, and I've been talking about it for a long time, it's time for the truth to come to it. And the second thing is that I like to talk about, and that's very important, is the hashtag creators before brands. And it's a personal for me to really promote independent creators and creators, period, because, and again, brands are great. We all like Batman. We all like Dragon Ball. We all like Spider-Man. Without Spider-Man, I wouldn't even be on the map. So I'm very grateful to Marvel Comics because I had the chance to develop Spider-Man Noir and it kickstarted my career. But at the same time, without creators, there wouldn't be all that. And people being like just in there for the brands, forgetting the creators, it's something that is not right. Creators before brands. Brands great, creators greater. And we have to keep in mind that sometimes when you're spending a day on a page, 2 days on a page, writing is hard, drawing is hard. Everything in this business is hard. And it's not just a brand selling the comic. It's the blood, sweat, and tears of a team of creators. And I want that message to be heard by the general public. And the public usually responds really well. I toured in the last 3 years over 60 shows in the United States. And I get often the same question, which is like, oh, I like your art, but like it's a little expensive. Can you cut the price? And I said no. And I say no because like I'm asking them like, how long do you think it took me to draw that piece? I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour. No, it can go up to 15 to 20 hours.
Yeah.
And if you break it down by hour, what I'm asking is less than minimum wage. Is this normal that something artistic be paid less than minimum wage? No. Is it normal that sometimes something artistic is pirated? No. When you go to the restaurant, you pay. When you go to the supermarket, you pay. And if you don't like it, well, you don't buy it again. But it's a different thing. You
it's
can't
a weird
just
perception
go.
of comics.
Exactly. There's a weird perception, but that's also because, again, brand culture made it possible. And I'm using a shortcut here because I could talk about that for about 3 days nonstop. But yeah, I mean, people have the perception that because there's a brand attached to your thing, it's a big corporation behind. And again, I've said it no later than last week in one of my videos. When you go to the stands and you look at an independent comic book can look as good as a comic book from a big studio.
Yeah.
But hey, Fair Square Comics on the left, Disney, Marvel, or AT&T, Warner Brothers on the right, they may look as good, but I'm a million times smaller. And I don't have the means. And every day is a struggle because I'm an independent creator. That doesn't mean that I'm complaining. I'm not. That means that we have to acknowledge that not everything is the same. The same way, we have this thing in America, and I know that in Europe, and even probably in the UK, it's not the same thing. In America, you have a minimum wage different depending on the city you live in, because the cost of living is different in LA than it is in.
Yeah, I mean, we've got that. We've got there's a national minimum wage, and then there's a London minimum wage.
Exactly. Because London is so expensive.
Yeah.
Right. But look, in France, it doesn't exist. The minimum wage is national and period. And people living in Paris, which is a more expensive city to live in, it's the same minimum wage as everywhere else, which isn't fair.
Wow.
So, again, we have to elevate the debate, but we need people to understand where we're coming from as creators.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I definitely hear you because as an independent comic manga creator, and I've been to conventions many times where it tends to be the bigger conventions like the London Comic Con where you're either in a space for indie creators or you're next to someone who's selling merchandise from an established brand. And the perception is I've had many discussions about this, and I don't want to go too far down that path because I think we can both talk for ages on this. But it's always weird to me.
Yes, exactly.
It's always weird to me that people will go to Marvel, pick up the toy or the T-shirt or whatever, but they walk past the independent creators, not realizing that at some point, even in Marvel, someone had to sit down and draw these comics, but there's not the same appreciation for the people that are doing that now. And so it's just a weird...
Oh, look, Nigel, I have funny stories about that. I have people coming to my table, and look, I have Spider-Man Noir is on my banner. Okay, I have a huge piece of art that I drew of Spider-Man Noir. It's my banner.
Yeah.
So of course, it's a showstopper. People stop at my table you really co-created Spider-Man Noir? I said, yes, you read well. It's written behind my back. Yes, I did. I co-created Spider-Man Noir, and I co-written his adventure for the first 12 years. And they say, do you have more? I said, well, no, I have the existing material, and I have my other books. Are you interested? And they're like, no, I'm only reading Marvel.
Yeah.
These people are my favorites. My favorites because these are the ones that I need to convince. Because at one point, I will need to have the product that will be just as appealing to them as the brand.
But then, I think a lot of it is just the thing that people don't necessarily want to take risks, and looking at Marvel. So it's not the quality. I've realized it's not necessarily the quality of the independent work. It's that I know Marvel, I know Marvel, I know DC, I know
it's
Dragon
the market.
Ball. So
it's only market.
Yeah, actually, you're right.
Market.
Yeah, it is. It's someone has told me that this is good, and no one's going to laugh at me for getting Spider-Man. But if I get this weird comic, or this comic I think might look weird or whatever, and no one knows it, and I show it to someone, and then they don't go yeah, good job. what am I left with? And yeah, so it is marketing actually. Yeah.
Exactly, and you don't have the views you have with independent cinema, because in movies you can see the difference in budget. You can see it on screen. Like, okay, I don't have the budget. Well, instead of having 1,000 people in the background, I only have 3. Or I'm using CGI and I'm duplicating all the people because I don't have the money.
Yeah.
But in comics, you can't tell the budget by looking at the book.
No.
It's very hard if the books are really well done and well designed and you have production values. That's also why I'm pushing all independent creators to step up their game in terms of production values and perception. Because the perception is everything.
Yeah.
And once we get them, then they will come back. Because, I mean, that's something that I used to do at conventions. Conventions are great for that because you have the people and the audience never lies. When you go to a store, it's not as, like, you don't have the kind of proximity you have with the convention. With convention, people come, and when they stop, something on your table, something in your backdrop, something stopped them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's your face and you're looking good. Maybe it's your T-shirt. I always wear my T-shirt from my comics.
Me too.
Or maybe it's something else. But, like, it's important that they understand that what you're offering is more than just a product. You're not selling a product. You're selling you. You're selling your story.
Yeah.
You're selling your experience. You're selling that. And usually I make a bet. I make a bet with people. I did that with Intertwined. Like, people are like, why should I buy Intertwined? And it's like, okay, you like Spider-Man Noir? Yes, I loved Spider-Man Noir. All right, so you will like Kung Fu Noir. Okay, but what if I don't like it? I said, look, you buy it. If you don't like it, I reimburse you tomorrow. You come back tomorrow. You read it tonight. Tomorrow you come back and I reimburse you. I never had to reimburse anyone. Never.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Like,
money back guarantee for comics. That's something that when you believe in your thing, when you believe in your project, money back guarantee is not a big deal.
No.
Because I believe in my comics. I know that what I produce as an independent creator is just as good as what I produce for the studios.
So yeah, you just put that to test. And I guess, like, for a lot of people that, like you say, raising the bar of independent comics, it will help break that perception that somehow independent comics are less than. So, and it's, you know, you can have bad stories made independently or made by Marvel and DC. So that's not exclusive to independent comics. Same way that quality stories aren't exclusive to independent comics. So I think it's a good thing that you're doing to aim to sort of break those barriers and then get people kind of to take more risks. I mean, you mentioned Intertwined, and so that is your creator-owned comic that you launched on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
I started.
Tell us about that.
Was technically my second creator-owned comic. Okay. My first one being One Hit.
Oh, One Hit, yeah.
I did One Hit Wonder first at Image Comics in 2014, 2015, and then I did Intertwined in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And now that I got all my rights back, One Hit Wonder is going to be republished next month with an expanded and retooled edition that will be from Fair Square Comics and on sale directly from my website.
Cool.
And I'm very proud of it because I revisited it was like revisiting an old friend. So I was like, okay, well, all the things that I couldn't say, all the things that I couldn't do, all the flaws that I saw, I could correct them in the new edition. And I also produced 5 original pages that 2 incredibly talented artists drew for me, Dennis Galero and Joe Suter, that are on the back of the album. And it's this very thick 160 pages graphic novel for $25. I think people will be very happy.
Yeah.
It weighs 490 grams. That's very thick.
Yeah.
Like, for people with the Imperial system, it's over a pound. It's like, it's really, really big. So, yes. Okay. I'm very happy about that. So, yes, Intertwined, you were saying.
Yes. Yeah, what was that process like? So, for both your creator-owned comics, but I guess the idea of launching something on Kickstarter and going that route as an independent, like, what was that process like for you? And
nightmare.
Also, just tell us about the story about Intertwined as well. So,
running a Kickstarter is like running a sprint.
Yes.
It's like you have to run, but you have to keep running. It's like between a sprint and a marathon.
I was going to say it's like it's a marathon sprint. It's
a marathon sprint. You run fast, but you have to run for a month.
Yeah.
So it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. Your level of stress is like going through the roof. And it's really terrible, but at the same time, Kickstarter is a wonderful ally for independent creators. It's a wonderful ally because it helps us being noticed. It puts us in places where we could never, like, look, I've added new followers on Kickstarter, and my last Kickstarter was in February. So my last Kickstarter was in February, but since February, since the Kickstarter ended, I've had more and more followers who are waiting for my next project.
Next one, yeah.
And it's great because these people, they might not turn into buyers right away, but at one point, maybe I can convince them because I will have the right project for them.
Yeah, it gets them on the journey. And then once they're on the journey, like you say, when the right project comes for them, then, yeah.
And again, this is an ant's job. Like, you have to convince every person when you don't have the power of the big corporation. You have every person counts. Every person that will spend $20, $30, $25 on your project counts. These people are gold. That's also one of the reasons why I'm using a service that allows me to share my phone number with you. Okay. I give my phone number away so people can text me. No, it's the new normal. It's the new normal, and for people who want to text me, it's +1-323-405-9401, and they know that they can text me any question about the comics, any question about art, any question about what they can like. And so it's kind of new in the comic book community, but in music, this is something that has been going on for years, and I've seen that with hip hop artists. They are in touch directly with their audience. There's no middleman.
Yeah,
and this is how you do business now.
Yeah,
you're not again, selling a product is not enough. You're selling you. You're selling a human.
Yeah, and you are really like selling yourself as, because we talked about brands. Like, you're on this level, you're selling yourself as a brand. So you're selling, it's not just a comic, it's you as a person, it's what you believe, it's your voice, and people. And
if you look at it, exactly, and if you look at it more generally, you take a step back. Who hasn't been a fan of this actor or this director, and they go and see all their movies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or this artist and they buy all their records?
Yeah.
Why couldn't it be the thing with comics?
Yeah.
For some it is. Like, yes, I like Frank Miller. I will buy anything Frank Miller.
Yeah.
But why can't we have like more Frank Millers? Why can't we have more John Burns? When can we have more Jack Kirby's? You understand?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like a small amount of people. It can be you and me.
Yeah.
And it can be you and me with the products that we put out.
No, that's a really good point. And I guess kind of like related to that point, the idea of, like, for me, like Kickstarter, one of the things it does is allow for more diversity in comics that are made and the stories that are told. And, we're sort of in this moment of time where diversity is forefront of a lot of people's minds with the sort of recent events and protests.
It's funny that you say that because 2.5 years ago, I was hired by Humanoids, and the first thing that I like offered them was to create a line that was more diverse. But I said, I don't want to use the word diversity because I don't like that word. I want to use the word reality. Because when you step out of your home the reality hits you in the face. It's like you see people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And this is your reality. You live in a very diverse world. This is the world. And we live in a world that is smaller with social networks. You can talk with someone from Nigeria, and then you can talk with someone coming from somewhere else, and in the same hour. Like I can talk to you, you're in the UK, and then 5 minutes later I will talk to somebody in Asia. That's how it is. That's the reality. So diversity is a good word, but reality is a better word. And the first person that I decided to approach when we started this was a guy named Kwanzaa Zajefo, who created this comic called Black, where only Black people have superpowers, and like it's in New York, and like it's a wonderful comic. And I said to him, look, I want you on my team because you know what reality is over diversity. And he said, now we're talking. We can probably do something. And he became a good friend, and we co-developed with two other people a wonderful universe called H1 together. So it's reality is very important, but at the same time, you also have not just to showcase the differences of people as an asset, but you also have to acknowledge that sometimes their own perception will be different. I remember seeing a French comic album from an African creator, and he was like portraying Black people with Black faces, and the guy is African, and I was like, we can't publish that in the US because the critics are going to go crazy.
Right.
But at the same time, this is an African legit artist drawing the way he wants to draw. So you can't go and say you shouldn't draw like that.
Yeah.
So management was like, okay, we decided not to publish that book in the US because it could hurt some people. And not because we wanted to be politically correct, but just because we wanted to acknowledge the fact that perception is different in different parts of the world.
Yeah, and that's important to acknowledge that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so not everything is for everybody. Sometimes, I mean, comics are for everybody, but the approach and the language has to be specific and local.
Yeah.
That's why when you're trying to publish manga in the UK with UK creators, you have less success than if you're publishing manga from Japanese creators, because they master their own language in a way that is more refined than people that are not. That doesn't mean that British creators cannot achieve the same level. That means that the perception of the public will be that they can't.
Oh yeah, and I've faced that perception, and it's a challenge. That. Yeah.
Because you're a wannabe. It's like, I want to produce a movie in the United States, but with French actors. Well, your movie to Americans will be seen as a ripoff of their own movies. Like, why would I see?
Yeah,
we're doing our movies our own way, and it looks like a fake version of our movies.
Exactly.
So it's the thing that you understand is that the internationalized universal version of comics cannot exist because of local particularism. And it's like McDonald's. You have the same McDonald's everywhere, but in every country you have, because they understood that you can be global, but you have to be local too.
Yeah.
And in comics, it's exactly the same. Like Marvel has understood that. The way that they decided to open an office in Shanghai and produce comics for the Chinese audience. It's Marvel Comics, but it's for the Chinese audience.
Yeah.
And these comics are now imported in the States because it doesn't cost them anything. But they're targeted at the specific audience.
I get that.
And that's fair.
That's not to say that you couldn't have a story that is somewhat universal. Say, I don't know why it's the first thing that comes to mind, but Lion King, for example, is, a story that can play to different audiences. You can still achieve that in some cases, I'd imagine.
You're right. That's why movies are universal and music is universal and comics should be universal too. But it can be universal. You have to acknowledge that some styles are speaking more to certain audiences than others.
Yeah, and I think for me,
and so I don't understand why.
And no, I get that, and I feel like that if I use the word diversity again, the whole idea, like when I see people get upset about that, I always think that just because a story is made doesn't necessarily mean you have to read it. Like no one's forcing you to read it, and the whole idea of reality, like you say, represented reality, is to get like different stories out, different perspectives. But again, like you said, not every story is for everyone. So having more diverse comics is not to say that we're going to take away the comics that you enjoy or whatever, or force you to read this perspective, but it's allowing those different voices and stories to come out. And I always see it as a way, like a necessary thing, because for me, if you don't have diversity in comics and you've got, say, the same people making the same stories, eventually that well is going to run dry, because you're going to get to a point where we've heard all those stories before.
And again, we go back to perception.
Yeah.
Like, I had the pleasure of being invited for several years to art schools, and at SCAD, which is a sequential art school in Savannah, in Georgia.
Mm.
And the first surprise that I had, the first year that I went, was 2018, was that 95% of the students were female or non-binary. And that was a good surprise. That was like, oh, people say that there are no new creators. No, not true. And they say that there are no women in comics. Not true.
Yeah.
There are plenty. I come from a market in France where there are a lot of female creators. A lot. And they're published and they're very popular and they've been for a long time. That doesn't mean that there's no problem. There are some issues and we have to correct them. But the number of female editors on the French publishing market is far superior to male editors. Now, this is not what we have to change. What we have to change is the number of top executives that are diverse.
Yeah.
The people who make the people on the boards.
Yeah.
The people who make decisions. The people who are in charge.
Yeah.
And that goes, like, it's even worse in the United States, because you have it's very different for book publishing and comic book publishing. Book publishing is like almost 100% female, except for the top positions. That's what we have to change. And comic book publishing is like, I mean, it used to be very, very male dominated, but it's changing, but it's not fast enough, and we have to make it change.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, do we have to throw away people like me? No.
Yeah.
No. We don't. We have to just find a way to accommodate everyone and find a system that brings quality and have a different way of sharing the spot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And we would honor ourselves to do that. So that's another area that I really like. And I'm working on it, on a project that I can't talk about right now, but seriously, I'm working on something like that, where there are a couple of projects that I'm developing at the moment where my name will not even be on or not even in the credits, because it's not important. Important is that the project itself moves forward with the right creators on top, with the names that will resonate with other people, will be an example. One of the other projects that I can talk about launch in a few days. I decided to lend my talent to a person that I met on Instagram. Her name is Kawana Lewis, and she is a hip hop artist and a personal trainer, and she wanted to tell her story in a comic book.
Cool.
And what she told me is, like, I want other African American girls to be inspired by the comic that I will put out. Will you help me? And I said, yes, let's do this together. But it's her thing. I'm just the pen. I'm the tool. And I agree to be the tool. I'm happy to be the tool because it's her voice, her project, her story. And ego is a very interesting thing. I used to have a discussion about that. Like a lot of artists have hard time finding writers to fulfill their vision,
right?
Because writers can have a big ego. But I'm like, I would be the mercenary. I would be the person who would totally like step beside and behind an artist if said artist has as a good and cohesive vision. And I would write for them. I would write under a fake name. I would write under my name. I would write under no name if that story needs to be told.
Yeah.
And it reaches out a public, and that public is if the story like resonates with people, it needs to exist.
And you would make it. Yeah,
the project is king.
Yeah.
Yes. The project is king. The creators are king. It's extremely important not to have an ego in this industry, because we are our time here is limited.
No,
so,
that is true. No, I hear that. I feel like we could talk like for ages about like different topics, but I don't want to end before letting people know what you are doing as part of Comic Conline.
All right, so I was approached by Comic Conline because I'm not just a writer and an editor, and I'm spending, and with quarantine containment here in the West, spent more and more time refining my craft as an artist. So I'm drawing, and like people will see in the coming month or year what I've been producing, and I've been producing a lot of art.
Cool.
So I'll be available as an artist, taking commissions and drawing for people and giving them joy. The last, it's my third online con this year, and every time it was really great.
Cool.
So I'll be very happy to draw for people, and please, not just Spider-Man Noir. I know I can draw Spider-Man Noir. I'm often asked to draw Spider-Man Noir, but please give me a bigger challenge.
Else. Yeah. I think you've done that.
Anything else. Yes, I can draw. I mean, last convention, online convention, I had a guy. I want you to draw Lobo and Dog, and I was like, oh, damn! I've never drawn Lobo, and so I went, made research, and came up with a logo that he loved, and the customer was really happy.
Cool.
So it's just like, can I make the customer happy by drawing something unusual?
Yeah.
I had a Vampirella. I had there's many Catwomen. Like, I would draw anything. Okay? Be creative.
Cool.
Be creative. Give me a challenge. Be creative. I'll draw whatever you want.
Okay, so that's the challenge that we're putting out to people then.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please draw.
Work.
Please allow me to draw for you.
Yeah. And then outside of Comic Conline, where else can people find you on social media?
People can find me under my name at Fabrice Sapolsky, all forms of social media.
Cool.
And of course, through my website, www.fairsquarecomics.com. May I remind everybody that they can order right now my new graphic novel, Wonder, that will be delivered in the next few days. And if you're in the UK, it will be even quicker. Because our fulfillment center is in. So if you want it, you can have it like next week, and it's already on sale on the website, squarecomics.com. I'm also making T-shirts. Have the other Spider-Man Noir, of course. I'm selling that, Intertwined, everything. So please visit fairsquarecomic.com. I also have this channel, and you can learn more about comics and what. The inside thing. I'm preparing a video on the food chain. That's going to be interesting.
Cool. I'll check that out. And yeah, no, it's been really good having you. Really interesting discussion. And it'll be great to invite you back on when you've got the projects that you can talk about, when you can discuss more and we can sort of have a conversation, because sort of some of the work that I do is with young people, not always specifically in comics, but certainly in terms of creative arts, writing, drawing. And I think some of these discussions would be really good for them to hear as well. So
no problem. I love giving directions, and I'm often with young people who wants to ask me a question about how to break into how do you maintain your status in comics, which is harder than breaking to comics is hard, but like staying into comics is even harder.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, you can't last if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a strategy, and that's what I've had for the past 25 years. Strategies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. No, definitely. We'll keep in touch and sort of have more of these conversations. But yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And just to let people know that as Story X Story, we do conversations, interviews with creators, with people from the video games industry, as well as deep dives into stories across pop culture. We are also comic creators. We have our own manga universe that you can check out as part of Comic Conline. And the week after Comic Conline, we are running our own online event, Gamepad, more video game focused, but we're also collaborating with Comic Conline on the cosplay part of that, as I'm doing these interviews for the convention as well. So you can check that out at gamepad.events and get in touch with us. Feedback at mayamada.com is our email address. And you can also listen to our podcast online at mayamada.com/storyxstory. So until next time, take care, everyone, and stay safe.